Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. What we've been telling you as the political parties have been unveiling their platforms along the campaign trail. Today, the Liberal Party of Canada has released theirs. The 82-page document promises billions in new spending to end the COVID-19 pandemic, address climate change, and promote reconciliation. Highlights of the platform include hiring more healthcare workers and improving mental health care, new targets for greenhouse gas emissions. They want to establish 10 new national parks, develop an Indigenous housing strategy, and they're re-promising for a third time to end all long-term drinking water advisories on First Nations. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau said that moving forward has to include a green strategy.
And let's talk about what real action on climate change means. Clean air for today and tomorrow. Good jobs for years to come. Canada succeeding in a world where competition is increasingly green. I want to speak for a moment to all the young people voting for the first time in this election. You've reminded me that you don't even really remember what the Stephen Harper era was like. Instead, you see all that we've done in the past years on climate, just like on reconciliation, on fighting systemic racism and discrimination, as just the baseline.
Conservative leader Erin O'Toole was in Ottawa Tuesday. He made policy announcements that focus on post-pandemic economic recovery, saying only Canada's Conservatives have a serious plan to secure a better economic future for this country. He promised to tie project funding to how it will move the economy forward and not on how green it is. He also called for Canada to make room in the economy for First Nations.
We'll review the Investing in Canada plan and other infrastructure programs to make sure they work for local priorities, for our municipalities and First Nation communities, and not just for the priorities of Ottawa insiders. Unlike the Liberals, we won't condition funding so narrowly to whether the project can be described as green infrastructure. We will ensure infrastructure funding maximizes our economic recovery. That means targeting funding to projects that strengthen transit and trade, reduce congestion and gridlock, and advance economic reconciliation with First Nations.
As the federal election nears its third week, we've been checking in on various ridings with Indigenous candidates. Tonight, APTN's Priscilla Wolfe takes us to Saskatchewan to meet the hopefuls there.
Here's a look at some of the Indigenous candidates in Saskatchewan running in the federal election. Tria Donaldson in Regina Louvain, Harmony King in Denethe, Mississippi Churchill River, Halston Russ in Yorkton Melville, and former Métis Nation Saskatchewan President Robert Doucette in Saskatoon West. All are running for the NDP. Doucette says Indigenous people need to get out and vote.
Well, let me say this to Indigenous people across the country, and I'll use Saskatoon West as an example. The Indigenous population across this country has a huge amount of power. First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, you can elect members of Parliament in a lot of ridings and have a huge influence on this country.
Harmony King says she wants to see better internet access and service in the north.
There's a lack of services in certain areas of support. Like there's a lack of services. Services can be fragmented here, and we have the highest rates of suicide in Canada.
Buckley Bellinger resigned his seat in the provincial legislature to challenge Conservative incumbent Gary Vidal as the Liberal candidate for Desnethe, Mississippi Churchill River.
So as a former NDP provincial politician, I wanted to make the jump to the federal Liberals to tell people that it's time for us to first of all vote, because we have incredible power to make those changes. But secondly, to work together, to stop splitting our vote and send one of our own Northerners to Ottawa to represent our views, to tell our stories and share our solutions.
Dawn Dumont Walker of the Okanese First Nation is running for the Liberals in Saskatoon University. She says she decided to run for the Liberals because she likes how they handled the COVID-19 pandemic and discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at residential school sites.
I thought that they handled it very well. As a child of residential school survivors, I can't tell you how powerful it was to hear our Prime Minister say the word genocide.
She's facing off against a Métis woman, North Marie Hunter from the Green Party. North Marie's brother, Isaiah Hunter, is also running for the Greens in Moose Jaw Lake Centre, Lanigan. All Indigenous candidates are encouraging Indigenous people to get out and vote. Saskatchewan currently has no Conservative candidates who identify as Indigenous. Michelle Karlenzig, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Well, Manitoba has itself a new premier. Kelvin Goertzen will take over from embattled Premier Brian Pallister, whose last day was today as he stepped down after controversial comments about colonization. Goertzen is the MLA for Steinbach. He's held cabinet positions in health and education and most recently acted as deputy premier. Today he held his first media appearance, and while he didn't directly address Pallister's record, he said that he would listen.
I have no doubt that when I open those doors to many different groups and organizations in the time that I have, some will have constructive criticism, some will have good ideas, some will have complaints, and some will have a strong vision of the future. For me, I intend to be quick to listen and slow to speak.
To northwestern Nova Scotia now, a Mi'kmaq chief harvesting lobster was met on the water by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Chief Alexander Paul says she explained she was exerting her treaty rights. With what happened next, here's Angel Moore.
This in our community.
This is Chief Andrea Paul of Pictou Landing First Nation, live streaming her encounter with fisheries officers as her community harvests lobster in the waters of the Northumberland Strait.
So we're going to continue to do what we have a right to do, and that is to fish for an Ndugalim fisheries, right?
Today, Pictou Landing First Nation launched their treaty fishery, Ndugalim, which means sustaining resources for future generations. The fisheries officers see some traps, but the harvesters did catch some lobster. The Assembly of Nova Scotia chiefs said, "In the interest of respectful treaty relationships, we urge DFO Gulf Region officers to seize the planned seizure of livelihood gear." Meanwhile, in New Brunswick, fisheries officers seized a boat from St. Mary's First Nation fishers. They were harvesting lobster within Wolastoqey territory, the Bay of Fundy known as LFA 36. The Wolastoqey Nation said, DFO must seize the use of aggressive intimidation tactics and provide equal and fair treatment without prejudice to First Nations treaty beneficiaries. In the meantime, Chief Paul is calling for support.
If you have any wood you'd like to donate, if you have a tub you'd like to donate, if you have carpentry skills you'd like to donate, we are going to set up a treaty truck house.
Chief Paul plans to start selling lobster caught by her band members as soon as the truck house is built, so the fishers will earn a moderate livelihood. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabukduk, also known as Halifax.
Well, it's time for us to take a quick break, but still ahead, blowback over a non-Indigenous man getting an MMIWG staffing appointment in Ottawa. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, Indigenous women's advocates are speaking out about a federal government staffing position that was reportedly filled by a non-Indigenous man. The Native Women's Association of Canada has sent a letter to Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett this week over the appointment of a new executive director of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Secretariat. The letter, written by Native Women's Association of Canada CEO Lynn Grew, said they were deeply concerned and failed to see how a person who is not a woman or Indigenous could relate to Indigenous women and girls when it comes to the violence they've endured. Minister Bennett's office told APTN this afternoon they will comment on the matter in coming days. Grew says a non-Indigenous person should not hold such a prominent position.
We have a right to be heard on this. We have a right to be consulted on this. And it's absolutely not right. I mean, we talk about a government who says they're implementing UNDRIP, who says they want to implement, they want this transformational change. Well, it needs to start, inside your own department. We need to see Indigenous people inside the department. We need to see even I would go as far as to say an Indigenous minister at some point. How long are these important positions going to be filled by, by someone who's not Indigenous?
There have been 800 arrests enforcing a BC Supreme Court injunction for Teal Jones to operate in the Fairy Creek. That's since May. The injunction is set to expire at the end of September. The logging company wants to extend it. A group known as Elders for Ancient Trees filed a response in court hoping to block that extension. With more on that, here's Dennis Ward.
Saul, thanks so much for being with us right now. What is your group asking the courts to deny in regard to the Fairy Creek injunction?
Well, as you know, the company, Teal Jones, that successfully sought the earlier injunction, is now seeking an extension of that injunction, the current one ending at the end of this month. They're looking for an extension of 1 year. We are disputing it on several grounds. Some of those grounds are what the court recognizes as clean hands. In the application of the first of the injunction, in the enforcement of that injunction, there have been, in our view, some violations of the terms of that injunction by Teal Jones itself. This has to do with towing cars illegally, the use of security services not mentioned within the injunction proceedings and so forth. But the most important of all, from our point of view, is that one of the respondents here is arguing an entirely different and novel approach to dealing with injunctions. As you probably know, injunctions, there is a test that was set by the courts. And the test requires, first of all, that there's a valid reason for the court to meet on this dispute. Second of all, the consideration of which party is experiencing irreparable harm. And thirdly, on balance of convenience, which party is harmed more. So on that basis, respondents like ourselves, environmental organizations and others, really, frankly, have no valid defense because what happens is that the decision is made on financial terms alone. That is, who is hurt most financially, and usually the company can establish that it has been harmed by the actions of the other side. And that on balance, the harm is experienced by that party and the injunction is authorized. What is failing in all of this is any consideration of the public interest or environmental or climate change considerations and the central role that deforestation of ancient forests have in terms of climate change, because in our latitudes, the forests, especially old forests, sequester and store more carbon than any other source, both in the trees and in the subsoil. So our argument is that the court should be considering a fourth test, and that is the test of the engaging the public interest when considering harm, irreparable harm, and balance of convenience, as it's called. That this should be the fourth test, especially in terms of that the federal government has passed a motion, for example, that we are in a climate emergency. So given that, we're saying we should be entitled to a fourth test, which is the test that I've just described. And we feel that on the basis of that, with 85% of British Columbians supporting additional protection of the old growth, that we should win on that basis. So that is the novel test that we're asking the judge to implement. Since it is innovative, as a precedent-setting action, of course, it will be up to the judge to decide to hear that or not. But that is the gist of it.
So recently, Teal Jones accused protesters of disregarding the wishes of the local First Nations. What do you say to that?
It's a very interesting question, actually. We are there at the invitation of the elder Bill Jones, whose traditional territory is Fairy Creek, which is the central area that began all of this issue. That this is his traditional homeland. He has invited us to come into that territory and to defend these lands. The request by the Pacheedaht chief, because basically their band council is dysfunctional, so it's fundamentally the chief that we're dealing with. And the chief he has asked us to leave, but we feel that we're serving a higher purpose by protecting these lands, so that when and if land claims are settled, and there is a treaty process that's almost completed for the Pacheedaht First Nation, that they will still have the standing forest with which they can make a determination as to its future.
So Saul, in early September, there will be the hearing. Why is it important that Teal Jones's injunction in Fairy Creek and not continue?
It should not continue because, for the reasons that I've given, that even using within the test that we talked about harm, that on balance, the greatest harm is what is happening to the forest and to ourselves and to the public interest and public opinion. That should be how these decisions are made. And I think that on those grounds, we would win on those grounds. The injunction would be overturned.
Well, interesting days ahead, so we'll see what happens, but we certainly appreciate you taking some time for us here today.
Thank you very much for having me today.
To the north now, the Yukon is reporting an alarming spike in opioid drug overdoses. The territory's coroner service says that there have been 14 overdose deaths so far this year. That number is double of what had been reported by the end of April. All of the deaths involved opioids in various formats of fentanyl, as well as in a combination with other illicit drugs and or alcohol. The number of deaths have increased 40% this year compared to last year's 10 reported overdose deaths. Since 2016, there have been 47 opioid-related deaths in the Yukon. Well, the Alberta RCMP are investigating after the body of a 6-month-old was found inside a home on the Stoney Nakoda Nation west of Calgary. Police were called to the home on August 25th to do a welfare check. That's when the infant was located deceased. An autopsy was conducted on August 26th, and investigators are now calling the death a homicide. The RCMP Major Crimes Unit has taken over the investigation and say there's no further details at the time. Well, with the help of an anthropology team, Selkirk RCMP are saying human remains found near the shore of the Red River just north of Winnipeg are between 100 and 200 years old, and they come from a centuries-old burial ground. The remains were located with large amounts of birch bark, which, according to anthropologists, was common back then. The RCMP said in a news release that elders have been asked to smudge the bones so they can be repatriated. Well, it's time for us to take another break, but we've got more news ahead, so stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Our very own Sandra Seidel took this picture while on vacation. This is the view right outside the Indian Trading Post in Banff, Alberta, located in beautiful Banff National Park. Didn't even take me with her. Send your photos to share@aptn.ca and then tune in each day to see if your photo is our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we got 21 in cloud for St. John's, 20 and a chance of showers for Charlottetown. Happy Valley Goose Bay, mostly sunny, 14 degrees, 11 and mix of sun and cloud in Nain. Saguenay, 17 with the chance of showers, same with Val d'Or. 21 and sunny for Ottawa and North Bay. 21 and sunny for Thunder Bay, 20s for Kapuskasing and Timmins and sunny skies. 15 with the chance of showers for Puckatawaga, Norway House, 19 and cloud. 27 and a chance of showers for Winnipeg, 23 and showers for Dauphin. 22 and sunny for Yorkton and Regina, 18 and sunshine for North Battleford. 15 and rain for La Ronge, Stony Rapids, 16 and showers. Sunny and 19 in high level, Fort Mac, 18 with a chance of showers. 14 and showers for Edmonton, 23 and sunny for Medicine Hat. Vancouver, rain and 20 degrees, 23 and sunshine for Campbell River and Quesnel. 22 and sunny for Fort Nelson, 19 and sunny for Prince George. 20 and sunshine for Beaver Creek and Mayo, 12 for Rock River and clouds. 18 and sunny for Wati and Yellowknife, 22 for Trout Lake. Fort McPherson, 12 with a mix of sun and cloud. 16 in Paulatuck and mostly sunny. 14 in showers for Baker Lake. New Yacht, 7 and cloud. Cloudy and 6 degrees for Glulik, Pangertung, 11 and cloudy. To Ontario now, where after weeks of pressure, the province is moving to bring in a vaccine passport, although Premier Doug Ford is clearly not happy about it. His government has been reluctant to follow what Quebec and BC have done, saying that they didn't feel that they needed to bring in a passport and they didn't want to create two classes of citizens, the unvaccinated versus the vaccinated. But despite that, the passport system is coming to Ontario in 3 weeks. Beginning September 22nd, people in Ontario will have to show proof of vaccination along with a photo ID at a number of businesses. Then within a month of that, October 22nd, fully vaccinated will have access to QR codes that they can show as their proof. Ford blamed the lack of federal initiative for his government changing course and moving forward with this plan.
It's no secret. This is something that I did not want to do. This is a serious step that we're not taking lightly. And I know this is going to be very difficult for some people. And let me be clear, this is a temporary tool that we won't use for a day longer than we have to.
To southern Alberta, there's been new developments have been announced for the Stoney Nation, which is adjacent to the city of Calgary. Leaders of the nation and Calgary businesses have formally broken ground on the Tiza Park. It's a retail development on Stoney land. Auto dealerships, Metro Ford and Big Four Motors will be the next tenants across the road from Costco, which opened in the fall of 2020. Dealerships are expected to be open for business in September 2022. Well, that is your APTN National News for tonight. It's also our 22nd birthday here at APTN, so we're going to leave you with a look back at our first year on the air. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Take care. Have a great night.
Hello, Kichimigwich Kapisiang. Thanks for and technical staff is of First Nations, Métis or Inuit ancestry. They are the people in our newsroom, behind the cameras, and in the control room. Our purpose, telling the stories of our people from the perspective of our people. Since television news first began many years ago, the mainstream media has tended to focus mainly on negative stories when talking about our people. The